Välkommen to Forfälliness Bellisting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Look at that.
Let us pray. Let us pray for those who are beginning their journey. May they find the path that leads them to comfort, peace, and love. God morgen and happy Mani's Day to you. Today we embrace the control and focus of the Norse god Mani, who, by all accounts, was the moon that rose in the evening sky and led us on a path of discovery and understanding of ourselves and our own mental capabilities that we may not even be completely aware of. Before we get started today, I want to say thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed on all the platforms and all the different channels that we offer this show, including, and most importantly, my friends and family at newrealitytv.com. New Reality TV is a collection of spiritual perspectives that hopefully one will resonate with you and help you to discover your path to your spiritual journey, to your comfort, and ultimately to a better mental health. For you who may have some extra coins jingling around and want to put them to good use, by all means, check out our donation page there. You can make a donation of as much as you'd like or as often as you like. Know that each dollar that we gain, it allows us to continue this electronic platform and certainly the in-person platform as we visit many people throughout the world and help them to find a better mental space and a better path forward for themselves. If you find yourself and having more questions about me, my teachings, my shows, my just everything about me, including and most importantly my life coaching services, by all means check out norsewhispers.com. There you can also find /coaching, where you can find out more information about me and my life coaching. So check that out. As always, we start each week with embracing the control of money. And there's so much to understand about being who you are. Recognizing the influences and the influential energies that will come into our lives every minute of every day, and how that can affect us, but more importantly, how we can take control of this mental energy that's just pouring into us and attempting to sway us one way or another. Influential energy is nothing more than that. It's simply energy that passes in a multitude of ways. The first way that you're probably the most familiar with, and this is our physical sensory input. Our physical sensory input includes vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch. All of these senses bring in imagery or audio or smells or all of the sensory input, but it brings in snapshots of the reality that we experience. So picture after picture is processed through our brain, through our heart, into our memories. This path is repeated millions, if not more, times a day as we process those things that are occurring before us and external to us. At the same time, we're also receiving spiritual information, spiritual energy crossing our aura from other people's auras. So we may have individuals who may be far away or maybe close by who are thinking of us and actually passing us energy. This energy is pushed into our psyche and alters the energy that we have inside. This is a super important thing to understand because a lot of times we may be not receiving any type of sensory input and all of a sudden have a mood shift or have just a bolt of energy kind of push into us. And then we get to decide ultimately what happens with that energy. But nonetheless, we can feel that. It's just out of the blue. We may get a bolt of it. Well, this is spiritual energy passing from another's aura into our being. So this energy now pushes us and changes our trajectory just a little as we navigate this path called a lifetime. Many times we may not recognize the energy that we receive. We may not understand what it is and why it is. So this is super critical in understanding that we have a responsibility within this energy to recognize what it is, why it is, and what we're going to do with it. So most often than not, we have a tendency to our minds have a tendency to just kind of let things go. So we process energy or sensory input down through our heart. Our heart releases the chemical composition in our brain, then processes that that biochemistry back into energy. And then that energy passes through this last gate, if you will, called the me gate, where we get to decide what energy we're going to allow before it winds up in our memories as our past experiences. So our past experiences are simply that. They're just the past experiences, right? So it's the matrix that's built between these past experiences that we call wisdom and imagination, one and the same. So the key to understanding our mental health is to essentially have control or an understanding of the energies that will affect it. This is a simple 101, if you will, of emotional management. How the energy will affect us. As an example, we could be angry. As one state, we could be, our mood could be set as such that when this bolt of energy arrives from wherever, whether it be a sensory input, whether it be a spiritual influence, whatever, and that bolt of energy goes and it lands in anger. This can, depending on how our horn of feeling then unpacks that, is dependent on whether we become, many may have experienced this blind rage, where we're just so angry we just can't think. Well, this, of course, we know from previous lessons, this is where we've removed the cognitive space from the horn of feeling, and we can no longer think our way through this energy explosion, if you will, within our horn of feeling. So it's critical to our mental health and to our mental balance, certainly the entirety of our mental space, that we understand what's affecting our energy that's being unpacked in the horn of feeling, right? So there's lots of energies that are going to come in there, and we simply have to understand and remember always that we maintain control. We control what energies are then translated. So in a very quick fashion, when we take in sensory input, that sensory input goes through what my ancestors referred to as the well of the self. The well of the self then converts that energy, right? Energy into biochemistry. Biochemistry floats up through the body, and it percolates through the body because that biochemistry is dependent on what state our body is already in, right? So if we already have, say, a certain number or a certain volume of a particular hormone, as an example, that sets our interpretation of that biochemistry in a certain way. This is why many times, if you alter this basic chemistry of your physical form with, say, alcohol or some kind of other mind-altering substance, what that does is, as the biochemistry is coming up into the horn of feeling, i.e., it's left the well of the self and it's on, and as it comes into the horn of feeling, it's being interpreted differently. So it's being contorted as it's passing into the horn of feeling. Once it arrives at the horn of feeling, of course, then we have this imagine, if you will, a horn, a drinking horn. And at the bottom, we could have some biochemistry created by guilt or by just a lack of investment, really, that's going to create a silt within the horn. So it's going to block off the bottom of the horn. And then and then you have all the area for the expansion of biochemistry back to energy. And at the very top of the horn, you have a very small space called the cognitive space. My great-grandparents referred to this as the head space, but nonetheless, this head space, or I like to call it the cognitive space, allows us to think our way through, very much like pouring a glass of root beer. As we pour the root beer and the foam begins to rise, we have the ability to manage by slowing down the pour, right? So we're not pouring as fast, so it gives the foam time to kind of dissipate, right? Or if we've poured maybe a little too quickly, we can kind of put our finger in the foam of the root beer, and our finger then kind of creates dissipation as well, probably much faster than just allowing it to kind of dissipate into the clear air. So this cognitive space allows us now to kind of put our finger in this expanding energy as the biochemistry that we've created is now expanded into energy. That energy then passes out of the horn of feeling into the, as my ancestors would explain to me, this last gate, if you will. And this last gate is really where we have the opportunity to just say no. We don't want that energy build. We don't want that energy associated with this memory. And we always have that control mechanism, if you will. We always have that, right? Always. So if everything is telling us is this experience has come out of the horn of feeling and it's saying, oh, we need to be angry, but we don't want to be angry. We can choose otherwise. We can choose, as we see this energy coming into the me gate, and this energy says, be angry. Here's your anger emotions that are attached to this experience. We can just say no, and we can deny it. And that's a very powerful recognition that we can have that helps us to control the energy that goes into our memories. Now, remember, with our energies going into our memory, part of that energy is going to recirculate back. right? So it's going to come into our memories, but then it's going to apply into the incoming sensory input as what we know as imagination. Imagination and the energy of imagination is injected into every sensory input we have. We are always predicting things, and we do this for, as you might expect, fight or flight. As we think of ourselves as watching a particular image, or a series of images rather, and this series of images, if you will, for our example here, is the nature, right? It's a wildlife scene, and we're watching, and we see something that potentially could be something that we don't want to see, right? It could be a predator. Our brain has forwarded the emotion, or has forwarded the imagination rather, of that being a predator. And so we key up our brain a little bit for fight or flight. So if we happen the next experience, and next experience, and next experience, and so we're keying ourselves up, we're anticipating. Ultimately, we decided either is or isn't a threat. And if it is, we're now prepared to react, whether we're going to fight this item or whether we're going to flight from this item. So our brain is kind of predicting this in a way, and that's where imagination comes into place. That's where imagination kind of sets the scene, is it's allowing us to kind of predict, if you will, by experiencing certain things and by being able to highlight individual pieces within the experience that we have. Super important that this imagination provides this energy for fight or flight. So that's really a key, and this is really why jump scares, haunted houses. This is really the underlying process at which that works. Right? So if we're not predicting anything, if we're not imagining something, what's going to happen is we probably won't be as affected by jump scares. It'll be funny. It'll be, or maybe it will be momentarily scary, but then funny, right? Depending on, obviously, if you've done lots of these haunted houses as an example, you may be kind of predisposed to these energies that say, ultimately I'm not going to be harmed here, but there's going to be things that kind of raise my blood pressure, right? Get the motor running. Why? Because we're predicting things. This also leads us to seeing some things that may or may not be real, may not have really appeared within the sensory input that we've received. We may see things that weren't there. We may hear things that weren't there, or that never produced audio. So this imagination has a very big part of our fight or flight syndrome, or the system. And so this is really why that memory, it's always good to be able to control that memory so that we are kind of going, okay, I believe that, this is going to be a scary, but I don't have to worry about the flight thing, right? And I don't really have to worry about the fight thing. I just know that this is going to be frightening. So I'm kind of presupposing, if you will. And this, again, is going to push that energy of imagination into our sensory input. So ultimately, as we think about money today, and we start work week for many, as we're getting underway and getting moving of the week, we're thinking about who's in control of our mental space. What are we allowing our systems to do. And we're going to look at certain things. The first thing we're going to look at, obviously, is, and we've spoken about it before, is this mood ring. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, imagination, because imagination is coming all the way full circle, and it's coming now, it's being injected before your experience makes it to the mood ring, right? So, an experience really is injected with imagination before it gets to our mood ring. Now, our mood ring obviously is that kind of preset emotional state that we find ourselves in. And it essentially will control what part of the experience we're going to process. It'll actually remove some things from our view or our sound or our taste or our smell. It's going to remove some things because it doesn't align with the mood, that mood ring that we've already set. Then we're going to make sure that every experience that we have, we're going to take all the way through our well of the self, so that the biochemistry created at the bottom now is legit. It's exactly how we feel. It's exactly what we believe. And so the biochemistry that makes it up to the horn of feeling is the biochemistry accurately represents our emotional state at the moment. Now the experience is transitioned back from biochemistry to bioelectricity. When it's doing that, we're controlling. We're putting our finger in the foam of the root beer mug, and we're controlling the foam so that it doesn't spill over. We know when it does spill over, of course, that causes our physiological symptoms, our body to react, because the rest of our brain doesn't know how to deal with this energy. So not to mention, we're going to lose that cognitive space. If the energy overflows, we've lost the ability to kind of sort things out, break things down into manageable chunks. So get to the horn of feeling. Then ultimately, as this energy is then passed from the horn of feeling to the me gate gives us the opportunity to deny certain energies. No. Before it becomes memories, and then memories becomes imagination, and we start the process all over again. All right. So we're going to take a real quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about steps that you and I can use every minute of every day to help control this energy that's passing back and forth between everywhere else and our mind, be able to manage that and be able to manage the emotional states that are being created with this energy. So we'll be back right after this commercial.
The air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me.
It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick break with us. As always, we so appreciate and love our friends and family at New Reality TV. Today we're talking about the control of Mani, and we're talking about how that focus can help us to create for ourselves a better mental space. So, as we mentioned before we went to break, there are a couple of places within our lives, within our thought process, that we have under total control. We talked about that experience coming forward in the form of imagination, injects itself into our sensory input, and it's processed through a mood ring. This mood ring, and that's exactly what it is, just a mood ring, or a ring at which this energy passes through that we've just seen, heard, smelled, tasted, touched, All of that's going to come right through this ring. If our ring is set in an emotional state of negativity or unwanted, we're grumpy when we wake up in the morning, that mood ring now shifts just a little bit, that it alters the images or sounds or tastes or smells or touches. It alters that energy, right? Because remember, all of the sensory input is converted to energy to pass through our minds, right? So once that's converted, this mood ring will now manipulate it further. And it's going to do that because it's going to take out imagery that contrasts with what it thinks is accurate. So if we're in a grumpy mood, it's going to be hard to see things or witness things or experience things that are positive, that are happy, that are joyful, right? We're not going to be able to see that. Why? Because our mood ring altered just a little bit because of the grumpiness, and it's going to pull those things really out of focus that don't match its internal state, right? So if we're grumpy, we're going to pull the happy things out. If we're happy, we're going to pull the grumpier things out, and we're going to overlook them. So that's the first place that we really manipulate our experience of the reality that we live, is by setting that mood ring, by setting that emotional state. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you're in a grumpy mood. You have a choice to change that narrative. You can change it. And you can say, no, remember, we have the me gate. We can say, nope, I don't want to be grumpy. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to find joy. I'm going to find love. I'm going to find these things, right? So we can consciously change our perspective there. We can alter the mood ring just a little bit back to that of joy and peace and harmony and love. Now, once the energy that we've created in sensory input passes through that mood ring, good or bad, one in our own perspective, good or bad, it's going to pass through what my ancestors referred to as the well of the self. The bottom of the well of the self are our beliefs, our values, our virtues, belief systems. All of that is going to be there at the bottom, and they're going to be in the form of, as my ancestors described them, rocks. And our energy is going to pass through those rocks just like water falling into a pile of rocks. And the water is going to, ricochet off one rock to another rock and another rock, and it's going to kind of flow down over another rock. And so this water, if you will, going across these rocks, is going to collect energy from each of those rocks, depending on the virtue, depending on the size of the rock, depending on how important that rock is to us, right? So it's going to bounce through all these, and it's going to gain energy into the stream based on our virtues, values, and belief systems. Once the energy passes through all those rocks and it's gained energy, it's going to be converted to biochemistry, all right? So the biochemistry then populates through the body, and it percolates up into the brain. Now, as it's percolating up through the brain, or up through the body to the brain, it's actually interacting with the general chemistry of our body, of what maybe science would call the pH balance, or certainly the toxicity level that's already there if we have, as I mentioned, mind-altering substances or other substances. We've seen through history, historically, we've said that diet, what we're eating, is actually a part of laying the groundwork for how we interpret our world. So the diet's going to alter it. Everything's going to alter as that energy is passed from the well of the self up to the horn of feeling. Once, of course, it arrives at the horn of feeling, it then is expanded back into bioelectricity, and that bioelectricity is then passed through the me gate and on into memories. Now, in the horn of feelings, remember, we have control, much like the finger in the foam of root beer. We can control that expansion. And then Once that energy passes out of the horn of feeling, of course, it gets to the me gate, at which we get the decision as to accepting or denying emotional energies with the experience. We always have that tool. So, as you embrace today, I want you to think about, firstly and foremost, as how you're looking at the world, how you see the world. Is it ugly? Is it dirty? Is it unwanted? And that kind of stipulates what mood your mood ring is in. This is a very important part of the interpretation of the reality that we experience, is setting that mood. Once we set that mood, we're in a happy, wonderful life kind of mood. We can make sure that we're living authentically by ensuring our virtues, values, and belief systems are all current, and that we understand what they are, and that this is really what we believe and what the foundation of what we think we are. When those values are correct and accurate and represent exactly what we think, that path from the mood ring down to the horn of feeling, or down to the well of the self, the bottom of the well of the self, is a straight shot, and it creates just the energy that we need. That's then converted to the bioelectricity. And again, bioelectricity, or the biochemistry rather, is going to flow up through the body. That's dependent on what we put in our bodies, what is the combination of diet and maybe mind-altering substances in general. So that's going to kind of convolute the energy that arrives, or the biochemistry that arrives in the horn of feeling. Horn of feeling, again, depending on how much silt we've built up in the bottom of the horn, allows us to expand our biochemistry back into bioelectricity, with this idea that we can control this, and we maintain a cognitive space that allows us to make sure that the foam doesn't overrun, and it just converts into energy that is then passed to the me gate, that we ultimately get to decide what we're keeping and what we're discarding before it makes it to memories. Now, once it makes it to memories, then it's going to resurface itself as imagination. That imagination is going to inject in our next sensory input. So it's super important that all those things, we recognize those things as being ways that we have the control of our mental capabilities, and certainly that mental space. Absolutely critical. And it will help us to reestablish where we want to be. Because remember, all the processing in the brain, we get to drive. No one else has control. No one else has authority within your mind. Just you. All right? So, this week, as we embrace Mani and we embrace his focus, hopefully we can focus on our mental processing, what we're taking in from reality, and being able to process that in such a way that it promotes us into a life of happiness and joy and harmony. Because that's really what this is all about, is doing this emotional interpretation that helps us to grow, evolve. All right? So, tomorrow we will see you bright and early, same time, and we will celebrate the courage of Tyr. The courage of Tyr really brings the opportunity for us to establish being who we are, embracing our authentic self, and just being us. So I hope that you will join me, and we'll talk about the courage to be you, because that's super, super cool. I gotta admit, it's pretty cool. All right. So today, embrace the energy of Mani, and think about your thought processes and how you're interpreting your world, and move forward. Move forward in control of that interpretation. Don't let it control you. You control it. All right. And we will see you bright and early tomorrow, where we will embrace the courage of Tyr. Love and light, my friends.
Ulfhednar's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska ulfhednar in south central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.